All right, we're officially live on the recording here. Okay, let's get started with a demonstration in terms of creating a double exposure artwork with Photopea.com. Now, the first thing you're going to need, obviously, is to open up Photopea.com. And today, we're going to go ahead and create a new project. You could open a photograph from your computer and start with one photo, but this is going to provide us a little bit more flexibility here today. So I'm going to click New Project. Now, I'm going to go ahead and name my new project Double Exposure, and we'll call this one 3 for third period. I have the full HD size selected, but I also want to have, in this particular case, I'm going to use portrait orientation images, and so I have a taller frame than I have than the width of the frame. And you can always reverse those right here, by the way. So that's a nice option. I'm going to go ahead and click create, and you can see this is my nice blank white document. I have a single white background layer. Okay, and what we're about to do is add multiple layers by adding multiple photographs. And in doing so, that provides us with options for creating a double exposure artwork. Okay, again, in order to achieve this, you're going to have the photos shot before you get started with Photopea. There's no way to like start this process and then go shoot. You need them on your computer already. Okay, so in fact, I will demonstrate real quick that I have on my desktop 3 photographs that I'm going to play around with here, and these are just my source material. Okay, so first, I'll start by opening up the photo I'm thinking is going to be the background photo for me. And in doing so, I'll click on the File menu. I'll pull down to Open in Place. And I will select from this window, pop-up window, my first image. Got an image of my son here, Bennett, and he's flying a kite. You can see that. In this particular case right now, I have blank white space, and I can choose to leave that if I wanted to, but honestly, I think it's not going to look too great. So I'm going to try to stretch this one out and fill the frame as much as possible. I get to make choices about, where everything lands. So if I want to, keep the kite in the frame, or if I want to, I don't know, I could stretch it out even more, make Bennett a little bit bigger. Okay. So that's where I'm going to leave that, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the check mark box. You can also click the return key on your keyboard, but that's essentially approving the transform of the photograph to the size and position that you want it in. Now you'll notice there's a little box right here in my thumbnail, the thumbnail photo in this layer, and so I'm going to go ahead and click on the layer menu and choose rasterize, and that's going to prime this photograph in this layer for changes. I'm not going to end up making a ton of changes here today in this particular situation, but if I wanted to, that's going to make it easier. I don't have to make that change later. So here we go. We're good. We've got our first photograph, and now we just need more photos to work with. So I'm going to go ahead and open in place my second photograph here. I'm going to play around with this photo of a frog that I shot down in Puerto Rico. And you'll notice that this one is not going to fit the frame very well. I shot it in landscape orientation, and so even if I go ahead and I try stretching it all the way out here, it's really going to be very awkward. And I want to be thinking about this in terms of like, is this the right photo for me in this particular case? So I'm actually using this example to show you that, there may or may not be photos that are going to work together well. Regardless, I'm still going to play around with it. So I'm going to make sure I rasterize my layer here. Okay. And from this point, I actually now have the capacity to create a double exposure. So notice I have one layer on top of another, and technically I have a background layer as well. But my frog is on top of the photo of my son. And in the same window here, the layers window, there is a little option here in in the upper right, it says opacity 100%. It always defaults to 100%. That means that the photo is 100% opaque. You cannot see through it at this time. But if I type in a different percentage, or if I click on this arrow and drag the slider bar, I can make my photograph less opaque or more transparent or more translucent, which means that I'm able to see through it to the photo behind. And again, the nice thing about the slider bar is it really allows you to experiment with like how much do I want one photo to be dominant over the other one. It's a tremendous kind of like tool in terms of comparing, and I can find like the position that I feel good about. Okay, that feels pretty nice. Again, not sure that this particular photo was the greatest one to pair with the photo of my son, but it's a little interesting. I've got a kind of curious juxtaposition. People are going to wonder, why is there a photo of a frog and a young boy, right? You're trying to kind of tell a story when you have two different images that you're putting together. So let's try one more just to kind of see how this goes, and then I can make some final options. So I'm going to go File, Open in Place, choose my third image. I've got a nice image of these redwoods. Actually, I think these are sequoia trees, and they're real nice and tall. And of course, this fits the frame better. These really nice vertical lines are created there, and so I'm already thinking like maybe this is going to work better along with my photo of my son Bennett, if that's the one I was committed to. Like unless I wanted to pair something with the frogs, I don't know. So anyway, I'm gonna rasterize this layer so that I can continue to make changes. And now I'm actually going to turn it off for a second. There's these eyeball icons that allow you to turn on and off images. And I'm going to do that first so I can see. I'm going to also turn off the frog. I'm going to turn the trees back on. And I'm going to drop the opacity of the sequoia trees. And maybe this ends up being a little bit more symbolic. These trees, they're so tall, and maybe this is now my story about like how my son is growing up so quickly and he's so big, and I'm able to kind of like imply that through this juxtaposition between these images. Okay, could I also include the photo of the frog? Absolutely, I could. It starts to get a little busy, and so you just need to make sure you're careful. Do all the images work together well? Honestly, I think I kind of like the frog, but it's the leaf, the green leaf, that's really like getting in the way. And so I need to kind of make some choices. Could I also erase? Yes, I could. I could erase that leaf. But one way or the other, I'm going to go ahead. In this particular case, I'm going to actually just give up on the frog. I've decided I'm going to stick with 2 photos for my double exposure, and I'm happy with that. I'll go to the File menu. I'll choose Export as JPEG. I always want to double check, make sure I've got my quality set as high as possible. The only time you would maybe reduce the quality is if you're trying to make the file size smaller. I'm going to click Save, and it's just downloaded it to my computer right now. Okay, so that's the process for creating a finished double exposure. Not only did I pair 2 different images, but I even experimented with a third. You could play around with all these different options. You could even go with more than 2 or 3 photos. You can play around with other shapes as well. But at some point, we just want to get you playing around with multiple images. You got to use this opacity window here, or this opacity option. Raising and lowering the opacity will provide the opportunity to create the double exposure effect. Okay, good luck. And I think we're almost done recording. Why won't it stop? Come on.